My parents came to Rutherford in 1968, and they had come leaving my brother at the time for about 2 years to kind of get settled here, and then bring him over. And I was born in 1975, so a couple years later, I made my appearance here in Hackensack, and we've had family in this town ever since. There were a few, and it was a small community, and people that they knew, and that was originally who they stayed with at first, were people that they were family friends with. And over time that definitely grew, but it was nice to connect with people that you knew, and I think proximity to New York City made it a really ideal town for a lot of people, so it was very popular. Growing up here was it's a lot of fun. It was it's something that I don't think kids necessarily have these days. It was one of those things where, yeah, your mom would call you at 5 o'clock for dinner, and hopefully her voice was loud enough that you would hear her, and you didn't, there weren't play dates. There weren't, you just kind of went with your friends, and you were, you knew enough to be around and close by and safe and not go off wandering by yourself. But growing up here was a lot of fun, walking to school, playing with our neighbors, and a lot of really great memories, I think, growing up on a street where families had kids the same age, relatively speaking, and it was really nice. Being a student here at Sylvan was it was a really fun experience, I believe. I don't know anything else. This was my first school experience, but I remember it was a lot of fun. The teachers were really, really caring, and took genuine interest in everybody, and it was probably a really good basis for making friends that I've continued to have to this day. So it was a really good experience. Absolutely. Mrs. Carey, my first grade teacher, always remember her. Mrs. Spano. I went to high school with one of her sons. Mrs. Lonin, who married Mr. Mayfield, who was the gym teacher, and Mrs. Haraska, the amazing principal's assistant, who at the time could type without looking at anything, and you're just in awe because you didn't know where to look. No, a lot of teachers, a lot of people that I still even stay in touch with on Facebook and things that we've reconnected that way. Yeah, we. After 5th grade here, I went to Pierpont for 6th, 7th, and 8th, and then on to Rutherford High School for the rest of my undergrad, for the rest of my schooling here. If you were to ask, say, Mr. Hurley, who's now superintendent, who was principal, but at the time was an English teacher, you'd probably say, what wasn't I involved with? Because I managed to get into every school trip ever. But I was involved in a lot of things with student council, any business clubs they had, FBLA, that was a big one, and anything where it introduced me to a new experience. I remember going away for Boys State, going away for Presidential Classroom, and all these really great trips and experiences that were really, really important, I think, at that time, because it really broadened my experience and my exposure to things, which was really great. I was involved with music for a very long time. My mom had got me introduced to violin classes at Fairleigh Dickinson at the time. And so I did that for a couple years, and then I got involved in band at Pierpont with Dr. Nordstrom, I believe. And that led to summer band and playing with Mr. Heller, Mr. Ray Heller, and learning a lot from that whole experience as well. I also went through a gamut of musical instruments from the violin to saxophone to trumpet, piano maybe somewhere in there, which is another great experience. I think it really grew the musical appreciation was really wonderful. He did. He did. He was intimidating in certain instances as he was directing the band, and at the same time, he used to have individual lessons with every single person in the band or the orchestra, which meant he had this tremendous knowledge of every single instrument and how it should be played, how it sounds, what the challenges are. And I think that as an educator, that's an amazing skill to have, to be able to connect with all your students in that way and sort of help encourage them to do their best. So that definitely, for a good, I want to say 6, 7 years, I probably was involved with music in the band and a part of all that, which was an amazing experience. So college was next, and for me, the choices were between NYU, Rutgers, New Brunswick, and Rutgers, Newark. And the more I thought about it, staying close to home was really important to me. And so I ended up going to Rutgers, Newark as a commuter student. And it was really great because it gave me the access I needed to the city and potential for jobs and interviews and internships, things like that, while keeping me home and keeping me close to, comfortable and friendly environment. So I think entering college, like many students, I was not necessarily clear exactly what I wanted to do, but I knew it was in business. And so I took a number of those classes, and as I was getting towards my junior year, I ended up specifying into accounting, and ultimately applied for some internships at accounting firms. Passed all the interviews great, and instead of an internship, they said, just graduate, we'll see you full-time next year or so. To have a job offer a year ahead of time was a really big weight off my shoulders. But so that accounting degree actually worked really well because I joined Price Waterhouse right out of school, and now PwC. And I was there at PwC for about 9 years. So it was definitely part of the career path that I was, geared to take. So Angelwish, I could probably trace roots back to, my being 4 years old. And, my mom always encouraged us, at a very young age to do the right thing and to help others where you could. And so I'm sure that in my efforts to help, and for us, I didn't have grandparents around. And so I had a lot of pseudo-grandparents in my neighbors next door, across the street. And there were some that were sweet, there were some that were cantankerous, there were, they ran the gamut, but it was nice because you got a full view of what a grandparent might typically be like at any different time. But I remember I would go help my neighbor weed her garden. And she was very sweet that she didn't yell at me for pulling up her tulips, which I thought were weeds. I don't know. They didn't have flowers. So, but helping others was something that was a part of me for a very long time, and definitely got nurtured at home, participating in a lot of club activities, whether it was with the high school, doing things for the food bank or collecting clothes. A lot of different volunteer activities through high school or through elementary and high school. When I got to college, I joined a fraternity, and it became a really great platform for me to engage this whole new group of people into doing fun things for others. And so back then, probably my second year of school, I got all my fraternity brothers to bicycle 300 miles throughout New Jersey on the side of major highways, like on the shoulder of Route 1 South, to raise money and awareness for children with HIV and AIDS, which in Newark is a huge, huge population, especially back then, where the kids were, the children, there's a huge population of children that were living with HIV and AIDS because their parents had contracted it from drug use. And sometimes the kids were infected, some of them weren't. Didn't really matter to us because at the end of the day, you were battling losing a parent. So from college and just being involved in that to such a degree where I may have missed a couple classes to go to do these events. When I got into the workforce, it was a client-driven industry where, your time isn't really yours. It's the client needs you here, needs you there, and I definitely got the frustration of not being able to give back as much as I was accustomed to, and so that kind of lit the fire under me to kind of come up with a solution or come up with something that would help me give back. So it was a very personal thing for me. And then ultimately, I took a step back and I saw how my idea could help other people. I wasn't the only one struggling with volunteering or giving back in 1997 because of overwhelming work demands. So Angelwish, we're a nonprofit that helps grant wishes to children living with chronic illnesses. We initially created it to focus on children with HIV and AIDS, mostly because if you looked at the population of children in need and illnesses, that was one that didn't get much attention. It wasn't as mainstream. And rather than follow where, hey, well, here's where we'd probably get the most donors, I was like, where could we do the most good? Even if it's not with a lot of money, where could we really have an impact? And over time, we did that for about 10 years, and over time we expanded that population to include kids with asthma, diabetes, because we saw how Angelwish worked could really impact those families as well. Having been with PricewaterhouseCoopers, part of my job was to help my clients make money and be more efficient. And that was a big part of what I did. And I enjoyed it. I did it well. And when the concept of giving back came up, there are people that really mean well, but their approach might take a lot of time to achieve their goal. And in my mind, there was a lot of ways that we could improve on some just long-standing traditional drives and make them more efficient. Efficient not only for me as a donor or for you as a donor, but also for the recipients, so that toys that are collected for the holidays are not spending 3 weeks collecting dust in the collection bin, but are spending 3 weeks with the mom or the dad who need them for their kids. And that creates a little bit of stress on the parent that they've got to hide the thing for 3 weeks, but that's a lot better stress. That's a good stress. It's a healthy stress. And so when people go online, we made it really easy for them to go online, grant a wish wherever they have a connection. And you could be in New York, but your heart's in California, where you grew up, where you were born. You can grant a wish to a child at Children's Hospital Oakland, or USCF Benioff Children's Hospital Oakland now, in the same 5 minutes that it would take if you wanted to grant a wish here at Hackensack. And just taking those chunks of inefficiency out, nerdily enough, it was like a huge thrill for me. It was so exciting to be able to say, we cut 3 weeks off this whole process. When I started this, I was traveling pretty significantly for work, and I knew that I needed to make sure that it was something that was lightweight, that I could run, in my spare time, wherever I was. So that came up almost 10 years ago, I think this month, maybe last month, when I was at the International AIDS Conference in Toronto, and I'd taken probably what was my last week of vacation, and a friend of mine at a foundation, had a pretty big foundation, had said, hey, sorry we haven't talked or met up, let's meet next week, and my knee-jerk reaction was, I can't, because I just took this whole week off for this event. I don't have time I don't have enough sick days, and everybody's catching on to my coughs and hacks during the week. But I kind of realized at that point that if I didn't make a decision, if I didn't do something then, and I was turning 30, I think, that I would never do it. I would never take the risk. I would never take the that chance on running a nonprofit full time. So there's a part of me where we've achieved a lot. We've helped grant over $3.6 million worth of wishes, which are, we're talking $20, $25 toys, gifts, things like that. So from that scale, it's pretty large. And I'm really proud of that. We've engaged so many donors, so many corporations where they've engaged their employees. And it's all great. I'm not satisfied. I kind of feel like there should be more. There could be more. We could have done more. So there's that part where I temper it, where I know that we've been successful, but in the back of my head, there's always the business person in me is like, we need to do more. It molded me in the way that it was such a diverse place to grow up. Kids from different nationalities. I mean, I think we were always, I could probably think back to at least third grade where we had sort of an International Day. And I think interacting with so many different people and my involvement in different clubs where you're forced, to kind of deal with people from all different areas, whether they're, folks on sports teams or academics or people in band, or being able to interact with those people and sort of bring people together for a common purpose was a really great starting point, because ultimately growing up, whether it was in college, at work, you have to kind of quickly pick up on how to deal with different people in different scenarios. And if it was business, if it was PwC, you had to make sure that your client was helpful. They might not want you there, but you had to make sure that you got to the end result, which was a positive outcome. And same with Angelwish. We deal with a lot of groups where nobody thinks that they need us, but working together, we can kind of help show them how we can help them. And so being able to persuade, negotiate, get people to think in a different way, I think a lot of that came from growing up here.